was a lot of initial hype around the hydrogen economy that was never fully realized. But things are changing, and hydrogen is once again in the spotlight. Stay tuned. Today we have with us Matt Krayton. Matt is the communication lead at the Mid-Atlantic Clean Hydrogen Hub, or Mach 2. Mach 2 is a hydrogen hub created by the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Regional Clean Hydrogen Hubs program. And it's awarding up to $7 billion to establish 7 clean hydrogen hubs across the country. Their mission is to bring together producers, users, distributors, and stakeholders to build a better hydrogen future. So let's talk with Matt about the state of hydrogen and where it is going. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited about the prospects of hydrogen personally. But you know, why is, what's going on with hydrogen? Why is hydrogen so important right now?
Hydrogen is, the way that we're sort of looking at it is one tool in a much bigger toolbox to help decarbonize our economy. So hydrogen is especially useful in these very hard to abate sectors. So heavy industry, for example, the manufacturing of cement, steel manufacturing, and other industrial process improvements, heavy transportation. So if tractor trailers, maritime shipping, even aviation at some point could be a use case for clean hydrogen. So hydrogen has the ability to essentially store energy in a way that's efficient and useful in these for these applications that require a lot of high heat applications or a lot of energy density and sort of lightweight energy storage. So there is a lot of opportunity there to help sort of decarbonize. Really, it's like the 15 to 20% of the overall economy that you really can't stick a battery in right now, at least. So it could be very useful in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the initial, promises of hydrogen, we always heard like, we're going to make these cars and they're just going to run on water, and, obviously that wasn't, entirely practical, although there are some kind of applications around that now. But, the challenge around energy is sort of in the storage, the transmission of or transportation of, and sort of the density of these things, right? So there's definitely some challenges around that. But in addition to that, you layer on sort of the clean production of these things, right? And so that makes different modes of energy beneficial for different types of things necessarily, right? And you were mentioning some, like heavy industry kind of use cases and things like that. Could we kind of dig into some of them? Because I did an earlier podcast where we talked about hydrogen being stored in a salt mine to provide on-demand energy, that was being transmitted to Los Angeles and things like that. There's some really interesting, I think, like grid scale applications that make hydrogen make a ton of sense. Industrial. Could you kind of can we dig into some of those use cases and could you explain why they're so adaptable to hydrogen?
Thankfully, a lot of renewables coming online right now. Not nearly enough, but we have a bunch coming online, and the hope is to have a lot in the future. The thing with renewable energy like wind and solar is there is some intermittency with when it's producing energy and when it's not, right? So at nighttime, for example, you're not really going to get a whole lot of solar energy coming into the grid. Right. The same thing with wind energy. So wind kind of dies down overnight, or some days it's just very still, and you're not getting quite as much into the grid. So, but then other days, right, you'll have very, very sunny days or a stretch of very sunny days where you're getting a ton of solar energy production. Very windy days where you're getting a ton of wind production, hydroelectric, same principle there. Right. And all of those electrons, right, all of that electricity that's being produced has nowhere to go, right? So it meets the demand, and then all of the excess just gets dumped, right? You can't use it unless you figure out how to store it. So right now, the means of energy storage that we have at our disposal are batteries, which in some case, like on a residential level, like there are energy storage options where, if you're producing excess solar, you can have that go into a battery system into your house, and and you have that energy saved for later overnight applications. But at the grid level, batteries of that size, they don't really exist yet at that scale for the type of efficiency that you would need and the type of storage that you would need. So hydrogen, what you can do with those electrons, then the excess electrons, is you can produce clean hydrogen through a process called electrolysis, which essentially is and this is not the scientists. I could tell you, like, I can translate what a scientist might say in this case. I can't tell you exactly. I couldn't build you an electrolyzer. I'll put it that way. But essentially what it does is it separates the hydrogen molecule from water. So you end up with clean hydrogen and oxygen and some excess water too as sort of a byproduct of that. So, but you don't have any emissions from the production of that hydrogen, with that methodology. Then you can take that hydrogen and store it. So hydrogen is easier to store because you can put it in tanks or salt mines. There's some exploration of that. That's not something that we're looking to do, obviously in this part of the country. But there are ways to store it in tanks and in other places and other ways where you can use that hydrogen then to smooth the intermittency in the grid. So instead of kicking on natural gas peaker plants, for example. So a peaker plant is an electric generation plant that kicks on when there's excess demand in the system to cover that gap. So instead of having those peaker plants.
And I don't think a lot of people really understand how the electric grid works. It's not like you just pump as much energy into the grid and it's like turning a tap on a faucet. You can't just keep pumping more energy into the grid. You're going to, destroy your grid. So you have to bring plants and power online as you use it to sort of make sure that you have a consistent flow of energy, right? So there's a lot of challenges, and that's why I think what you're speaking to is having that ability to bring it online and offline like that is really beneficial.
Absolutely. So yeah, when you smooth it out, you don't have those peaks, and then you could avoid the use of natural gas fired plants, which do create emissions. When you combust hydrogen, you get water vapor. And then there are potentially some other byproducts of that process, but that's, I think, manageable through various technologies that we have, like catalytic converters and other types of filters and things like that. But overall, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, PM 2.5 particles, and other sorts of pollutants, clean hydrogen is extraordinarily clean, and a huge step up from combusting natural gas on that front. So at a grid level, there is that application that is very interesting that could help solve that energy storage problem that we have as more renewables come online. Well, so that's one big piece.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it's not that hydrogen isn't without its challenges too, right? I mean, because because one of the things about hydrogen is it's an extremely small molecule too, so it will leak out of things if you give it a chance. It's not as big a molecule as some other things, so that kind of containment is challenging, and then like pressurizing it in a tank can be challenging, and I think that's one of the reasons it's been kind of slow adoption on the automobile side, because some of those challenges have been difficult to solve. Whereas on the grid scale, you can really address these much larger scale, and it's a much more efficient process to do those kinds of things. Plus, we need to find things that can store a lot of energy at a very large scale, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one note on the hydrogen piece too is to your point, we are coming, and I say we, just the whole industry, right? There's going to be a lot of research and development going into figuring out materials and minimizing the risk of hydrogen leaks. Obviously, you don't want to leak any if you can avoid it, which is fine. Now,
although it's not going to necessarily kill you if it leaks like some other gases.
Right, it's non-toxic, so it won't cause any sort of health issues or anything like that you would have with other types of fuel sources or energy storage. Again, you don't want it leaking though, because there are some, having a large amount of hydrogen could, exacerbate some activity of greenhouse gases and things like that. But the good news is that there are a lot of, if you're looking at so I'll just take a step back, because I think it's worth noting as we're exploring any new energy source that nothing is perfect, right? We have a suite of imperfect solutions that are going up against, a suite of energy products that we have today that are not clean at all. For the most part.
Right.
I mean, things have gotten better again with catalytic converters and other, but it's not perfect, and it certainly is causing sort of greenhouse gas emissions, right? Anytime those peaker plants kick on, or you get in your gas powered car, or run a lawnmower, any of those types of things, right? Or a container ship comes into port, right? That's all emitting stuff. So what we have as an alternative to that is imperfect but very, very good solutions to these problems, right? So if you look at solar panels, for example, across the value chain, right, that's not an emissions-free or pollution-free process to build and source the materials you would need for a solar panel. Same thing for wind turbines. So it's worth.
There's potential environmental impacts about where you put them too, and things like that as well, right?
100%. I think the big picture is, like, if we want to have the modern conveniences that we have today, we have to accept some degree of imperfection. Now, the question is, how good can we get these? How close to good can we get these different solutions that we have, or how close to perfect can we get these solutions rather? And I think the answer is pretty close. It's going to require a lot of R&D. And I would put hydrogen in that bucket. The same thing of solar, wind, hydrogen, imperfect, but much, much better than what we have today, especially for these very, very targeted applications for hydrogen. So in terms of like storage, there's going to be a ton of R&D, and there already is a ton of R&D going into how to store this stuff. I will also note too that we're producing hydrogen in this country now and globally, actually. The difference is the hydrogen that is being produced today. So at minimum, right, we're displacing dirty hydrogen production, which is what's being produced today. So I can get to the color codes too.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about what constitutes, because there's a lot of different types of hydrogen, right?
They are. So this is actually a really interesting question. So I come from communications background, right? So we're trying to help educate the public on these very important issues and engage communities and do all of the things that you need to do when you're trying to marshal support for decarbonization or any other big sort of policy priority. And so as you're communicating, people have to pay attention to a whole bunch of different stuff in their daily lives. So going back to your comment about people not knowing exactly how the electric grid works or how things, so you flip a switch, the lights come on, and myself included, right? Like we're all in that boat, unless you're forced to think about like where that stuff is coming from, how it's getting to your house, or apartment or business or wherever you are. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing to think through how people perceive, different concepts. The way, so when we're talking about different types of hydrogen, we're not actually talking about any differences in the actual molecule, right? Hydrogen is hydrogen. That's it, right? So the end product is the same across the board. What the differences are in the production of that hydrogen, which is important. So it's a little confusing though. So when you say like different types, I'm not saying when you say, but like when people say, and we've had this conversation interestingly enough with a lot of folks, is when we're saying, well, there are different types of hydrogen, they think, oh, well, like, what do you mean different? They're thinking about the end product itself. And so really what we're talking about is production. So I can go into, so they basically grade hydrogen in with color scales, or a color coded sort of chart to categorize different types of hydrogen production. So there's gray hydrogen, which is a lot of the hydrogen production that is occurring now across the country and across the globe. So that is done largely through a process called steam methane reformation. So they take methane, which is natural gas, for lack of a better description of it, right? So they take methane, and the hydrogen molecules are separated out of that using steam methane reformation. The byproduct of that, though, is there are carbon emissions from that process. So that's gray. So that's, again, ton of dirty hydrogen being produced today. Then you have blue hydrogen. So same process, except you employ carbon capture technology on top of that. So instead of emitting the carbon, you're capturing that carbon and then either storing it in the ground somewhere where that's practical, or there's some conversations too around reusing that carbon. So you can use carbon dioxide for food and beverage applications, for example, from that process. Again, how much of it you're going to be able to use for the sort of bubbles in soda and stuff like that remains to be seen. But that's what blue hydrogen is. Essentially, it's gray hydrogen with carbon capture. Right. Then you have green hydrogen. So green hydrogen is a form of clean hydrogen that uses electrolysis. And the inputs to that are water and then clean electrons from renewable energy sources. So we're talking, again, wind, solar, hydroelectric, stuff like that. And then the final is pink hydrogen, which is the same thing as green hydrogen, except you're using nuclear power as an input. So also emissions free, it's just nuclear power. So, and then, if you really want to get into it, there are different shades of hydrogen that they're starting to get into now. So, I was talking to someone last week and they were saying, oh, well, there's turquoise hydrogen. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this to ourselves? It's not particularly productive. Like, if I could go find the person who came up with the color coding chart, I would say, maybe we should rethink this, go a different direction, come up with some other descriptor for it rather than color coding. It's
and I know that there's different, there's two parts to this, right? One is the way you capture the hydrogen, and the other way is the way you use it, right? Mm-hmm. And so equally in the way that you've got these different sort of colors of hydrogen and the way they're greener otherwise, I know that like some hydrogen can be mixed with fossil fuels and burnt in an internal combustion engine. They can be also just purely burnt in a type of hydrogen-based internal combustion engine. Mm-hmm. They can be put into fuel cells, and so there's different amounts of efficiency that you get with different kind of models and different levels. And what you were saying before about sort of the benefits of incremental change, I fully believe in. We can't always get there right away. So like having something that's a little better than the thing we had before can sometimes be very helpful too. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to some of like how it gets used and the types of systems it gets used in to kind of produce the energy?
So we'll start with ideally, where we want to end up. So ideally, I think most applications you probably want to end up with some sort of fuel cell, which has zero emissions whatsoever. It's all very self-contained and is very safe overall. Right. I mean, we're using fuel cells for different things. I know like Toyota, for example, makes consumer vehicles that are powered by hydrogen. You can get them in California, in the US. I think in Japan, they probably have some of those as well. So
do those tend to be like more for like fleet vehicles, would you say?
So they're available to consumers actually. So like I think the Toyota Mirai, I think is the name. They're the make of or model of hydrogen, consumer hydrogen vehicles that Toyota makes. So and again, that was sort of a vestige from an earlier day before battery technology has come a long way. So I will say that like most applications like that, for most people in the United States, batteries will be fine. Plug-in hybrids or plug-in electric vehicles are going to be totally fine. Most people don't drive, hundreds of miles every day. But, when you're talking about long-haul trucking, you're talking about driving hundreds of miles a day, potentially, and very heavy batteries and payloads, like we talked about a little bit before. So, but I think ideally we get to a place where you're using hydrogen fuel cells. There are again, applications where you could convert engines to combust hydrogen, where you would, have some sort of catalytic converter filter that, pulls some of the other stuff out of it, like NOx emissions, which are not super high, but it does happen when you combust almost anything. So, those are the types of sort of areas, and I think the key is targeting it specifically again to these hard to abate sectors, and not getting too crazy with trying to apply it to everything. Right. So what we need are these targeted solutions to things. And I think for most applications, electrification is going to be just fine. Right. Commercial buildings, residential buildings, consumer facing applications, electrification is going to work just fine. But again, for these heavy industries, those are things that,
and they're big polluters too. Else. Heavy industry.
Huge huge emitters. So if you look at the map of the Mach 2 region, which is really South Jersey, Philadelphia, so Southeast Pennsylvania, and Delaware. This region has an industrial history, right, of manufacturing, refining, all sorts of different things. And you look at there's a big red blob on the map where you see like emissions concentrations in the area. And it's because there are industrial operations in the area. So now that's a good thing in one perspective because it's jobs, right? It provides people a living, access to opportunity, but unfortunately, it also has the side effect of providing pollution. Now, swapping out and displacing all that fossil fuel usage in those heavy industrial applications like refining, for example, or the manufacture of cement, glass manufacturing in some cases, steel, and even operating like steam pipes within a manufacturing or industrial facility. All of that you can use hydrogen and essentially displace, the fossil fuels that are being used or dirty hydrogen in some of these cases. So a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, with some of these bigger kind of like heat dependent kind of operations, like, making cement or steel or things like that, they are very polluting and that it sounds like a great use case, for hydrogen. And like, does hydrogen have any advantages in sort of the way it burns and the temperature at which it burns, or, relative to like fossil fuels? Is there any advantage there?
There's a little bit more energy density. I'd have to, defer to the engineers and the scientists on that one. I don't want to get too far, down that down that end. But yes, it does burn. It does put out a higher temperature in certain circumstances, and does provide a fair amount of energy density, per kilogram for hydrogen. But I defer to the engineers on exactly what the specs on it are. But it is a candidate for replacing a lot of those things that we use. I mean, a lot of it's natural gas now. I mean, that's what we're talking about, replacing in most of these cases.
Well, and I know that in some of these fuel cells, even natural gas, because of the way it's made, there's some crossover there between hydrogen and natural gas in some of these fuel cells, isn't there?
That I'm not sure of, actually. I'm sort of down the hydrogen path. I'm not sure about natural gas fuel cells. I mean, they may exist. I'm just not sure what the situation with those those are. So,
and I don't either.
I've got hydrogen in the brain.
Yes, well, and rightly so. Could you talk? You mentioned Mach 2 there. Could you talk about? I mentioned in the intro about how it's part of a government program to build these hydrogen hubs and that sort of thing. But bringing together like the whole hydrogen community or the stakeholders in what could be an emerging hydrogen market. Could you talk about how that all works and how that comes together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean there are a lot of stakeholders, right? In places. So anytime you're again trying to advance a large policy priority in order to improve public health, to improve, climate change and mitigate climate change. There are a lot of constituencies that you're going to have to speak to, and to solicit input from, bring them on board. So, in the Mach 2 region, just to start with, from the very beginning, we have had very good relationships with organized labor, for example. Mm-hmm. So we've had labor unions at the table from the very beginning to help craft what this might look like. And in this particular region, we're talking about 20,000 or so jobs. Many of them are going to be union construction jobs as a part of this. Mm-hmm. So that's an important piece of the puzzle. Right. The second are educational institutions that can provide workforce development. So there are jobs that we know that we're going to need to train people for, and there's some jobs that we don't even know that we're going to need yet, or what the description of those jobs might be in terms of safety or operations or engineering or some of the scientific pieces around hydrogen. But we're going to have to find out very quickly what those might be, and then train folks. The third, and I think perhaps maybe the most important piece here are the communities in these areas. So I will say that this particular region, Mach 2 region, has been is home to a lot of what I would call overburdened and underserved communities. So overburdened by pollution, so they have had to really shoulder a lot of the burden of air pollution, have higher incidences of asthma, other sorts of issues like that as a result of emissions from various industrial operations, or not even industrial operations necessarily, but we live on the sort of I-95 corridor, which is a major transportation artery for the eastern and the eastern seaboard and the Northeast in particular. So that's another group where you both want to reduce the emissions, reduce the burden, but then also provide opportunities that historically have not been available to people who have had to live through some of these things. So making sure that you have a focus on equity and bringing folks in from these communities to say, hey, look, we're trying to build a clean energy ecosystem and economy in this region, and we want you to be at the center of all of this. So that is another constituency. And then the general public, right? So people have questions about this.
Yeah.
A lot of questions, right? Like hydrogen is not something that's on the minds of most people, nor really any clean energy sort of solutions, right? People don't wake up thinking most days about windmills, right? Or the wind turbines, right, or solar, unless you have it on your roof and, you're looking at your bill and you see how much money you're saving on electric. But other than that, people don't really think about it. So people have questions about what does this mean? How does this factor in? How safe is this technology? How is it going to be used? How will it impact my neighborhood? How will it impact, the future that we want for our communities? So all of those things, I think, factor into the broad-based but also targeted outreach that we have to do in order to talk through this. And the cool thing is, like, if you're going to engage with us, you're engaging on the ground floor now. Like, you have an opportunity to really shape how this moves forward. You have an opportunity to really participate in the development of that clean energy ecosystem that's going to exist in this area. So we're seeing some really cool stuff. Like I had the opportunity to go a couple months ago down to Delaware, University of Delaware, where they have the Center for Clean Hydrogen. So it's a brand new research center. And a stone's throw from there, you have two other material sciences companies and a fuel cell company, and then another stone's throw from there, you have a company that's working that I think spun out of University of Delaware, so it was sort of commercialized technology that's focused on developing a novel electrolyzer design, so materials and membranes for the electrolyzers that make it a whole lot less expensive to build and deploy these electrolyzers. So so you already see the seeds of what could exist in this area. So it's going to be really, really cool to see how that develops fully as things get underway in the next couple of phases.
And I've seen some really interesting research around different types of materials that allow for denser hydrogen storage too. So there's so many aspects of this that can really drive industry, right? So if somebody wanted to get in touch with Mach 2, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. So our website, Mach2.com.
Mach-2.com. Yes.
There's a hyphen in there. Yep. So that's where you find it. There are a lot of good resources on there. So folks can go on there and read a little bit about our initial what we call technical volume, or initial technical application to the Department of Energy. Some of that's a little bit out of date at this point because we've, things have gone through changes.
Fast-moving industry.
It sure is. And we've, posted all of those updates on the website as well. So, folks will have an opportunity on a rolling basis to see what things have changed, or what projects are in scope now or out of scope, or have fallen out, or are being pushed to later phases of the project. But Mach 2 is Mach2.com. So Mach-2.com is where you head, and then you'll be able to get in touch with us and ask any questions that you want. So we're more than happy to have conversations about hydrogen any day of the week. So, if folks are curious, please reach out for sure.
Well, and I also want to like go loop back for a second too on something you were just saying about how energy production has disproportionately impacted certain communities. And I'm in Chicago, right? And so anybody who's in Chicago has probably at some point driven through Gary, Indiana, which is the old, it's a lot of refineries, old steel production, and it's a town that's been through a lot of hardship. And when you drive through there, you're like, what is that smell? I mean, it's just the refineries put out a horrific smell. And I can't imagine, what a lot of the people around them have to deal with to just, live there. It would be amazing to see, an economy that suffered like Gary's has be transformed from this sort of polluting, environmentally destructive kind of industry to something that's more of a clean energy that's not destroying the communities that they live in, make it, if I say they're destroying, God knows what everybody's going to come back at me, but, like improving the communities in which they live in, both with, new technology, clean energy jobs, and a cleaner environment. That seems just like such a win-win. And I organizations like yours, I think, are key to that, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a huge win, and the way that I like to look at it is it's about finding the best balance that you can. So those industries serve a purpose now. They had served a much larger purpose at one point, and they provide jobs, like we said before, right. Jobs and that's meaningful to the people who live in those communities. At the same time, there's that trade-off of the smell, the pollution, the emissions, the impact overall to our climate, the increased incidence of extreme weather and other sort of weather-related disasters as a result of that. So all of that accrues to having, as a society, to recalculate how we think about that balance, and can we preserve jobs, expand jobs, bring manufacturing and some of these processes back onshore in the U.S. to places like Gary, Indiana, or Delaware County, or Philadelphia, or South Jersey, or Delaware. So can you bring those things back to the U.S. and provide those opportunities while at the same time cleaning up the air, cleaning up the environment, and mitigating the impacts of climate change? The answer is, I think, absolutely yes. It's 100% yes. So I agree. It's a total win-win, and I think there is a broad realization that that balance is needed. Right? We do need to consider those other pieces. It's not just the jobs, it's the air we breathe. It's, again, the weather, it's the whole picture. So I think that recalculation is happening. And certainly we've seen at the federal level over the last 4 years, much more investment, historic levels of investment in these areas of again, sort of repatriating some of the manufacturing in chips, silicon chips, and clean energy, and all of these different pieces. The hydrogen hubs program, chief among them, in my view, is a real down payment on a future, a much better future. So I totally agree. Win-win across the board. And I do think that there is broad-based agreement. And I think, again, we just have to figure out like which mix of imperfect things will add up to the most benefit for everyone. Yeah. But I think we're headed to a place that's much closer to perfect, or much closer to very, very good than we have in a very long time. Yeah. From an energy production perspective.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying, but sort of like the impact of a lot of of environmental destruction falls disproportionately on poor communities, and that's both local, like in Gary, Indiana, and globally, like people who are in low-lying areas that are being flooded. I suppose I'm lumping some billionaire properties on the coastlines in with that, but I'm not feeling too bad for them in all of this. They can figure it out.
But they're moving up the hill, though. That's the thing. They're moving up the hill. Yeah. They are. Yeah. I mean, if you look at Miami, right, like some of the higher, the neighborhoods on higher ground, which traditionally have been, more working class, are now folks are buying up property up there because they see the writing on the wall. The waterfront, properties may not be there in 20,
Yeah,
25 years.
You might
maybe
have to
sooner
move
than
all
that.
the way up to Georgia to get away from all the flooding that's going to happen in Florida.
That's it. Yep.
Based on
Yep.
some of the maps I've seen.
Yeah.
It seems like there's this really, really exciting, future for hydrogen and just clean energy in general, which I'm very excited about, because I think the prospects of driving an economy on clean energy technology, has a lot to offer us. And I know that's sort of like a sweet spot for kind of some of the things that you do. And I want to speak for a second about your company, Publitics, which you're a founder of, and you function as an advocacy arm for a lot of these kinds of initiatives and groups and things like that, and certainly for Mach too. Could you talk a little bit about Publitics?
Sure. Yeah, we are a full service public affairs, public relations, and strategic consultancy. And we've had the opportunity to do a lot of work in the clean energy space on both the corporate side for initiatives like Mach 2, and then also on the foundations and advocacy group side. So environmental groups that are working on some of these really difficult issues and trying to understand, how the public thinks about climate change, how the public thinks about energy, how we can talk about it in a way that's more accessible, and that actually means something to people, right? So that's a big deal. Again, like going back to this idea of like not having any idea how the grid works, it really is a huge issue because you kind of think, okay, it's just going to happen. Like we're going to hit the switch and then the lights are just going to come on. It's going to be fine. And, there's a lot that goes on behind it. And again, why would people pay attention to that when there are a million other things to pay attention to? So we do a lot of thinking about those types of issues. How do you make climate and energy issues more salient for folks? How do you connect it to things that they care about in their everyday lives, which there are a lot of connections, but we do have to do a lot of, we do have to connect those dots and do the work to do that outreach. So we do a lot of thinking on those issues. So it's been a really interesting process in, doing a lot of polling, survey research, talking to folks, focus groups, interfacing with community groups on various projects, doing the communications to see how people are really thinking about these things and how salient the issues are to folks, which there's some surprising stuff in there.
Yeah, for sure. I just think it's we live in a really interesting time. I think there's so much technology emerging right now that is headed in the right direction. Some of it not so much these days, but much of it, looking to improve it. Because I remember when we all drove around in leaded gas cars, and I would sit in traffic and behind all these cars, and I get woozy from the fumes and car sick. And then we, got unleaded and, we learned about the problems with leaded fuel and, it just keeps going. And we talk about sort of the long arc of history. You can see sort of the steady improvements that we make in this long arc of history. And it makes us not only, more competitive to enable a lot of these things because, we're not wasting as many resources. We're, not destroying as much environment that needs to be rebuilt and things like that. But we're creating a really interesting new future that allows us lots of different modes of energy distribution and transportation, which is really, really exciting, I think.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things that we see is like sort of a high level insight is if we can figure out how to just break that partisan prism that certain segments of the voting population and also policy-making population view climate issues or energy issues through. If you strip away all of that stuff, what you're left with is again, particularly over the last 4 years, a vision of a much brighter future where we are building things here in America. We are producing more energy than ever in America. We are cleaning up the air right here in these communities, right? So like all of those things are good. We are trying to mitigate climate change, which we all experience. I don't care what you believe. If you even believe it exists, it's still hurting you at some point. I mean, if you're farming and you have to deal with, greater incidences of flooding or drought, all of those things are going to impact your yields. Heat, extreme heat, absolutely. I mean, we're about to have, a little bit of, I guess, what it was, the heat dome out here in the East Coast.
The Midwest too is getting some too.
Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this type of stuff is, well, and not to mention, like, talk about that, like, not to mention this idea of that sort of like wet bulb temperature, right? Where the Earth essentially becomes uninhabitable, and certain parts of the world are already experiencing that type of heat and humidity combination where people are dying from this.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't care. Like, that's the thing. It's like the heat does not care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, right? It's still going to cook you. Right? It's going to cook your crops. It's going to flood your basement. It's going to ruin your car. It's going to do, it's going to blow your roof off when the tornadoes come through more frequently. So that's the interesting thing. So like in our research, we've actually found that people report experiencing a different reality depending upon their partisan viewpoints on certain things. So for example, we did some survey work where we knew for a fact that this particular area had experienced extreme weather recently. So these really like intense rainstorms that we had never really gotten. So where I'm sitting today in my office in Caldwell, New Jersey, which is where we're based, and we have a couple offices in different places, but we're not near any body of water, like large body of water. The Passaic River, which is probably about 10 minutes away, that's always a culprit for flooding. I mean, that's always been a problem. But like where we are today, I'm up on a hill. And over the last 5 years, we have had 2 flash floods down the main drag just up the road from our office because of the sheer volume of rain that falls. When I was a kid living here, that never happened. No. You'd get heavy rains, but nothing like that. So you're watching like the movie theater, for example, knee-high water just flowing through the doors of this.
Look at
and
Florida.
We're up on a hill.
Florida week,
right
and
now.
Everything's been flooded.
Absolutely. So you do survey research. So you do some. So we did some research in a place where one of those types of storms happened, where it just dumped a whole bunch of rain in a very short amount of time and flooded a whole bunch of basements and stuff like that. And what we ended up finding is that depending upon how you identified politically, your experience or reported experience of reality was completely different. So the question was, have you experienced or has extreme weather impacted you in the last month? And you would see on the Democratic side, like it was 85% plus had that experience. On the Republican side, it was like 50-50. 50-50. So now some people did actually admit that they had experienced extreme weather, but that's a huge drop from 85%, right? So there's a big delta there. So the question is like, how is that possible that you're experiencing objective reality in a different way?
Yeah.
So once a term becomes polarized, like extreme weather, so it was global warming, and then it was climate change, and then you start talking about the consequences, which is a fair thing to do. Extreme weather, it's better, but it still does become a little bit polarized. So again, like you look at stuff like that, and that really is the sort of stuff that we're doing a lot of thinking about. Like, how do you make these issues salient? How do you strip away that partisan prism? Because again, if you strip all of that away, I think we have a huge opportunity in front of us to make a huge difference and really impact the quality of lives of the people who live in this country and the communities, whether it's in Florida or New Jersey or Chicago or California. Yeah. I think we have a huge opportunity. So we just have to do that work and figure out how to talk about these issues in a way that makes sense.
Well, there's a reason why I live by the second largest body of fresh water on the planet. So, I got a lot of this stuff on my mind. Well, hey, Matt, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great knowledge dump, and it's an area that I'm super excited about, and I think so many people should be paying attention to because it's a really important area. And thanks so much for filling us in on this. And if people should go to mach-2.com and learn more about Mach 2 and what they're doing in their clean hydrogen hub. So thanks again, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, give us a like, so think about subscribing, share the content, and I will see you in the next one.